I didn't get a chance. Usually I
Hello, everyone. This is the 5th Epical Revelation Fellowship. I'm Reverend Dr. Roger Paul, and we are going to study paper 5 today, and that starts on page 62.1, and the paper is God's relation to the individual. And today is March 23rd, 2014. And let's say a little prayer and we'll get started here. Okay? Father, thank you for bringing us together again. We pray that you'll watch over this group today and allow us to learn something and expand our minds and help our relationship with you to do your will. And we pray that you'll bless all those that hear this later on the tapes, that they might understand you a little bit better, and allow us to share this with our brothers and sisters. We say this in the name of your Son, Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen. Amen. Okay. Let me get the right one going here so I know it's in the... Yeah, I know that. Well, I need somewhere else then.
On the left is moving.
Okay, here we go. Now we're in business. All right, God's relation to the individual. Diane, would you like to start today?
Okay. If the finite mind of man is unable to comprehend how so great and so majestic a God as the universal Father can descend from his eternal abode in infinite perfection to fraternize with the individual human creature, then must such a finite intellect rest assurance of divine fellowship upon the truth of the fact that an actual fragment of the living God resides within the intellect of every normal-minded and morally conscious Urantian mortal. The indwelling thought adjusters are a part of the eternal deity of the Paradise Father. Man does not have to go farther than his own inner experience of the soul's contemplation of the spiritual reality, presence, to find God and attain communion with him.
Okay, so it's telling us, Jill, come on in and have a seat. It's telling us that right from the beginning, our relationship and our contact with God is where? Within us, right? That adjuster within us. God's not far off or just in paradise, is he? He's within each and every one of us. And they basically are saying it's wrong for us to comprehend God as some way off being that we can't even conceive of when a piece of him is right inside of us. Okay? And the other thing I want to mention here is it talks about how the universal Father can descend from his eternal abode in the infinite perfection to fraternize with individual humans. So we got to think of that. For God to do this, what a sacrifice in a sense for God to take a part of himself and give it to every single being out there. Now, I want to bring something else up here that we're going to find out a little bit later. I don't know if we do it in this paper or not. I think we do. Did you know that there are beings out there that are created that do not have a thought adjuster? Right? Y'all realize that. Okay? Mm-hmm. There are many of the celestial hosts do not have a thought adjuster. Now, and what's interesting is those beings, there's many different things that they do with those beings and for those beings. But the main thing that God keeps contact with each of these beings without an adjuster is through what would make sense, the personality circuit, right? God creates all personalities. That includes every being out there, even the ones created by his creator sons, the creative mother spirits. Every type of being that has personality is encircuited in God's personality circuit. Remember, we have a personality circuit, we have a spiritual circuit, which is who? That's the Son, right? We have a mindal circuit, which is whom? The infinite Spirit, right? And these are each circuits. And for us, what's the Spirit of truth? It's part of the Spirit circuit, right? What's part of the Holy Spirit? That's part of the mindal circuit, isn't it? Through the infinite Spirit. So through personality, God still stays in contact with every single being, even those without thought adjusters, right? It's kind of interesting. But think how special we should feel, because we're encircuited too, aren't we, in that personality circuit? But we have something else too also, don't we? We have a fragment of the Father within us. What a wonderful gift, you know? Not all creatures in the 7 super universes has that Father fragment. Only mortals starting out from this level, right? Now, many other creatures are given what? Fragments of the Son and fragments of the Spirit, aren't they? Okay? Just like the adjuster. But what's the difference? These beings can't many times permanently fuse with those fragments. They just always go with them. Okay? But our fragment actually becomes part of us. Got that? Make sense? Okay, what a wonderful gift.
Do seraphim have adjusters of some?
No. No. And an interesting thing too that I want to bring up on that, since you mentioned that, is who else did not have a thought adjuster? Lucifer. Now these are Verandadect and Lenanadect sons, right? They do not have adjusters. They're local universe sons of God. You see the difference? They're created by Michael and the local universe Mother Spirit. So they are created on a lower level than a regular son of God. But they are not, they are in the personality circuit, but they do not have thought adjusters. You see the difference? That's part of those beings that do not have thought adjusters. Right?
But Caligastia didn't have thought adjusters.
So Calagassa did not have a
Satan
thought
did not
adjuster. Satan did not have a thought adjuster.
Well, it sounds like I don't know if it's most, but at least a lot of the personalities that do not have a origin in a physical world like ours, doesn't seem like many of those have a thought adjusters.
That's right. That's right. Now think about this too. The Calagassa 100, when they left Jerusalem, the capital, right? They were volunteers, but in order to come back to Earth as a volunteer, they had to leave their thought adjusters behind on the capital, right? Just like whom? Just like Caligastia, just like Lucifer, they don't have thought adjusters, right? So when these volunteers came back to this planet, they did not have that constant voice any longer in their head, did they? Because they would have heard that voice coming up through the mansion worlds. They had just not fused with that thought adjuster, right? So they had gotten used to that voice of God and the guidance that this is the way, right? All over and over and over again. And so when they left the system capital to come to this world, they didn't have that anymore, did they? So they were supposed to depend on what? God's personality circuit at that point, doing the will of the Father through the personality circuit, until they got back to where? Jerusalem, where they picked up their thought adjuster again, and they would fuse. You follow me? So they went into rebellion. All these, the 60 that went into rebellion, did not have thought adjusters when they went into rebellion. The more interesting part is the 40 that was loyal. They didn't have thought adjusters either, did they? So they made the decision that the Father's will was more important than their own will, didn't they? It's just an interesting thing.
How do they stay in touch with the personality circuit?
They don't have to stay in touch with it. It's always there. It's just part of the circuits of the universe. You know, just like there's a gravity circuit, and there's, you know, that's a physical circuit. But just like there's a spirit, the sun circuit, the spirit circuit, spirit of truth, you're inside that circuit all the time. It's an external force though, isn't it? Okay? where the father circuit is an internal force, always. Do you see the difference in that? The sun is an external force watching out for you. It's the shield of God, if you will. It protects you. The spirit force is an external force, the Holy Spirit, right? It protects you. It works with the Spirit of truth. But the Father Spirit, since it comes in through the adjusters also, it's an internal force. It's working from within out. The other circuits are working from what? Without in. Just like gravity affects us. Gravity doesn't work internally, does it? It doesn't affect you inwardly out. It affects you from the outside, right? If you go jump out a plane, you're going to go splat, right? You don't control that. It's a circuit of God. You got local gravity, you got spiritual gravity, and then you have the gravity of Havona. You got three different kinds of gravity, right? You're talking about 3 different circuits there too. If you understand these things, it helps make a little more sense.
On this topic, did Adam and Eve have a thought adjuster?
Probably not. Probably not. They don't really say. Now I take that back. Yeah, they do too. They are given thought adjusters when they defaulted. Do you remember?
That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. I think they came without thought adjusters, but when they defaulted because they had to go through the human experience, then what their first moral decision, what happened? Their thought adjuster came, right?
So that must make them very unique.
Pretty unique, I would say. Yeah. Now understand this too. Just since you brought it up, I don't want to get too far off of this. But think about this. When they died, they went to the mansion world. They had to go through the same process as every other human, right? So they had to go through all the mansion worlds, and then what did they have to do? They had to fuse with their adjuster, right? So when they fused with that adjuster, that put them on what pathway? The ascension plan. Yeah. They become a renewed what? Citizen of the universe, of the cosmos. Now they were already Jerusalem citizens, weren't they, when they came down here, material sons and daughters. If they would have stayed faithful in their mission, would have they had needed a thought adjuster on this planet? No. Because they would always be considered material sons and daughters. They're considered part of the administration of the planet, right? But because they've defaulted, they had to go through the same experience we did.
Now, if they don't default, what's their destiny?
Their destiny is to stay until the planet reaches light and life.
And then?
And then most of them are released to go on with the Paradise Ascension. Now, interestingly, though, Jill, even when we reach light and life, if they go on for the Paradise Ascension, what do they have to receive when they get to the mansion worlds? They still have to receive a thought adjuster, don't they? To become a part of the Ascension plan. It's the part of going from becoming a ascending son of God, right? They were descending sons of God. Adam and Eve, material sons and daughters, are part of the descending sons of God. Just like Calagasta, just like Lucifer, and all the rest of Satan, you know. But when they start from here, they do the mission, the planet reaches light and life, they're released. When they're released, they go to the mansion worlds, they're assigned a thought adjuster. What else would they be assigned if they didn't already have one on this planet? A guardian seraphim, right? A pair of guardian seraphim. No one gets away without getting a guardian seraphim. Either you get a personal one assigned to you here, or a personal one's assigned to you when you get to the mansion world, right? And what's another thing predicated on that? That it is in close association with getting that thought adjuster, because it's the guardian seraphim that certify you ready to fuse with whom? Your thought adjuster, right? See how it works? Everything's dependent on everything. Really kind of interesting.
Okay, we got another thing here. It says every normal-minded and morally conscious. So,
We
let's
studied
say a
that.
kid that comes into the ghettos, okay, he might not be normally minded because he's so self-centered or something, you know, so In other words,
Uh,
we would have to advance in our physical reality to have the reality of God.
No, we just
No.
studied the different minds.
Yeah, that's part of the subnormal mind, right? There's a group of guardian seraphim
I don't
just
think he'd be subnormal.
no, I don't think so. I mean,
I think subnormal is.
subnormal would be like, you know, like your IQ, like you have a birth defect or something like that.
Yeah.
If you are in the ghetto and you are as bright as anyone else or normal minded, you may have an experience that is harder and that may not lead you, and you can do some bad stuff, but it doesn't mean you are not normally minded and you don't have a thought adjuster. I have a
So
strong.
we're saying that the influence would not hinder that in some people. We're not
Absolutely.
saying everyone.
That's right.
now.
Absolutely.
I don't think the influence would. The influence of the people in
The
the
environment,
environment
let's say.
around him does
Yeah.
not influence his mind.
Mhm.
not a
Is that-
normal mind. That's
in-
right. Yeah.
In that it's not going to make him less than normal-minded.
It
Mhm.
actually says in the book, and when it's very specific, that no, I think it's in this paper, that no influence, either social, spiritual, mechanical, anything, will keep you from
Doing God's
fusing with your adjuster. Nothing can
Yeah.
keep you from doing that.
All right.
Regardless of what, how poor you are, if you had nothing, if you were sick, it doesn't matter. Everyone has an equal opportunity to advance on the Paradise
I
Ascension
think
plan.
what Stephen is envisioning is someone born in a household that was very criminal, that was into drugs, that was into
Mhm.
thieving and stuff like that.
That was
Where do they
really-
get where do they get a leg up? I don't
Mhm.
know.
But isn't it like around 5 years old that they are going to be
They
making
can
some
make,
kind
they can
of,
make a decision.
Moral decision. Yeah, they're given a thought adjusted. The problem is this. Will they let go of the barbarian lifestyle enough to allow that thought adjuster to help them make the proper decisions? And some people allow that to happen, and there are some beings that don't, that never get above the barbarianism. Now, that does not mean they won't end up on the mansion worlds. If they have that slight faith, just enough to believe that they'll survive, they'll get there. But they may be in the remedial classes on the mansion worlds.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The barbarianism is not a good thing, any way you look at it, but it will not keep you out of heaven. It won't keep you out of the mansion worlds. Okay.
I see two aspects of your question. One is with respect to the normal minded, right?
Mhm.
Which is either you have a brain that functions normally or it doesn't. And this has nothing to do other than perhaps the hygiene condition and all that stuff that could have an impact on that. But
Mhm.
as long as you go through that and you are properly fed and all the things, you can be in the most barbarian household that you can be and maybe go through torture and all, you can be normally minded, right? The other aspect of your question I feel like is now Jesus keeps on talking, those who are saved versus, let's go save some souls, right? Let's go reap some souls, right? So the following question then is, and then maybe a part of your question, at least I have that question for sure, is what makes the difference between someone making the decision to follow the ascension plan versus who don't?
That would be
And
it,
what is
yeah.
the impact of the social environment on that? Are there some cases where some ended up not making those choices and not being saved, but could have with the proper influence?
Mhm.
That's the fundamental question.
Yeah. In other words, I know that you can make that leap at some time, but you can be so affected, and it's like sometimes do we understand that this person has just been affected to such a degree that he has to first move up to some levels to grasp his normal mind, because his
Studied what
influences.
makes the difference, environment or genetics. And they pretty much decided it's half and half.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Mhm.
Because they definitely break us down into three types of people.
They don't
Abnormal,
have one for people
they're
who-
normal, and the supernormal. Okay, and
Yeah.
the normal is what most beings fit in, but you have the subnormal where you have something about the makeup the human body does not function properly, and it could be a disability or dozens and dozens and dozens of
Okay.
things. Okay, but then you often remember you also have a supernormal, and these are people who have a more advanced calling. They have a spiritual concept in their life that has taken over their life, and they could do great things. And that's what they talk about, these supernormal people. They're not Superman by any stretch of the imagination. It's just they have this cosmic insight that's greater than the normal person does. That's the only difference. Okay, is your insight. But we need to always come back to that these people who are even the subnormal minds, even those who are disabled and can't think properly, those are also given the opportunity when they get to the mansion worlds. It's not they're not going to make it.
Does
You know?
supernormal also include people who are like Einstein?
Yeah,
The
that would fit.
writer.
Yeah, they
Those are
have
spiritually advanced. but-
spiritually advanced. Sometimes they're mechanically more advanced. They have better bodies, but you know.
and Tesla and Einstein. And,
Yeah, and then you have the most important class to them is the spiritual. You know, if you on this world make a decision of as a cosmic citizen that you will survive and you will do the will of God, then you will probably fit in that supernormal fairly early, because those type of beings, they want to assign a guardian angel to make sure that they get the best out of the benefits of this life and helping others. That's what it all boils down to. Is that it comes back to the fatherhood of God and brotherhood of man. It's not for themselves that they do this. It's for all other beings that associate with them. Does
Yeah,
that make
okay,
sense?
and that's what I would say in a normal mind. You know, you would have regard for your family, regard for your comrades, and so on. But somebody that's totally self-absorbed, and that's all the further he can see is what's in it for him, he hasn't even got to that stage of recognizing, you know, other people and their needs or anything else. It's all about him. And at that point, I'd say that's not a normal mind. You know, it hasn't advanced itself to even grasp the
He could
concept.
have.
He could have. I'm saying it would be a training process for him to where a lot of people are born into a situation or whatever, and it's just natural flow to them. You know, and then other folks have to, what? You mean you're really supposed to do that? You know, they have to grow into that concept, you know.
It's interesting. You know, let's keep going.
Yeah.
This is going to drive me crazy a little bit. Okay.
We got one paragraph.
We got one paragraph. Let's try to get
Already?
Millie, let's keep going.
God has distributed the infinity of his eternal nature throughout the existential realities of his 6 absolute coordinates, but he may at any time make direct personal contact with any part or phase or kind of creation through the agency of his pre-personal fragments. And the eternal God has also reserved himself the prerogative of bestowing personality upon the divine creators and the living creatures of the universes, while he has further reserved the prerogative of maintaining direct and parental contact with all of these personal beings through the personality circuit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to advance this. If you don't
What are the
see-
6 absolute coordinates?
Yeah.
There we go. I'm sorry for y'all at home. What was your question again?
What are the 6 absolute coordinates they are referring to?
Oh, that's the. Remember when we studied the very first part of the thing?
Yeah.
We're talking about the qualified absolute, the unqualified. This is the absolutes they're talking about.
Okay, so there are 6. What are the 6 ones?
6 of them. Yeah.
Which are those?
God the
1?
Fa- Yeah, including God the Father.
So God the Father, number 2.
Son, God the Son,
Son,
God the Spirit. Okay, and then you have God the Supreme, God the Ultimate, God the Absolute. It's part of that,
Uh-huh.
right? But, okay, that's other parts of himself too. You catch that? You know, God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. They're all parts of God the Father, parts of the Trinity, right? The others are parts of the different aspects of God the Father, okay? But he reserves the right of direct personal contact with each and every being through his pre-personal fragments. What's that? The thought adjusters, okay?
There are others, I think, but this is one of them.
Yeah, this is one of them. But only he has that right to do that, to contact you through that fragment.
So does it mean that the Son with is also what how do we call these fragments? I don't know if we call them the fragments.
No, not with the Son. It would be considered the circuit.
Circuit. So when we have a Son fused personality, it's
Mhm.
fusing to a circuit, not a fragment.
Not the fragment, from what I understand. Okay, they're given a fragment, but it does not become part of the. In other words, it's to help them along till they get to a certain point, and then they become part of the cosmos of the universe. But they're part of the circuit, not part of the fragment. That makes sense?
Okay, yeah, that's obviously.
That's
need to
not
reread
totally.
it.
That's not totally right, though, Gilles, or the way I explained it, because they say that these fragments are provided for them to fuse with. Okay.
That's what I thought, but
Yeah, that's not totally right, but it's not the same sense of the Father. When you fuse with a Father fragment or a Spirit fragment, it's not the same as fusing with the thought adjuster. It's a different.
okay,
type.
that's different. But the question that I have is, do they share the fact that they can communicate through that? Can the Son,
Not to God, not to the Father. No.
the Son? I'm talking about the Son
The Son,
to
yes.
so the Son can communicate then with the Son fused beings.
Yeah, they can communicate, but not through the personality. See, that's the
Right,
difference.
right, not the personality.
Yeah, not through the personality, because still, even though they would fuse with the Son fragment, they're still part of that personality circuit. You follow me?
Right, yeah, yeah. And the person is
only God
the
the Father
yes,
can communicate through that personality.
can give personality.
Right.
Only God the Father.
Yeah, and that's why it says here that He reserves the right, right? Or what does it say here?
Of bestowing personality.
Of bestowing personality. That's right. He says also reserve to Himself the prerogative of bestowing personality, right?
So when he says bestowing person upon the divine creators, what does it mean? It means short-circuiting
No, through
All creatures,
through
divine creatures and living creatures.
the Creator sons and Creator.
to the divine creature. It means to
That's
the divine to the divine creature and the living creatures.
That's
I see.
right. All right, and then let's go on though. We don't want to miss the last half of this paragraph. He also further reserves the prerogative of maintaining direct and parental contact with all the personal beings through the personality circuit. Only Him.
Yeah, because he's the only one to give personality. So
That's
that
right.
makes sense.
Right. Okay?
So he bestows personality on divine creators and living creatures.
Right.
To everyone.
Who would be the divine creators? Creator
Sons.
sons, right? Created Mother Spirit. Right? Now, let's not forget there's other divine creators, aren't there? There's a whole host of celestial beings that are created by whom? The downstepping of these beings. The seven master spirits, right? You know, with the infinite spirit creating reflectivity, all the reflectivity circuits. And what do they have for that? They have the angel cores for that, right? So the downstepping of this creation is allowed to go on, but it's still the Father that gives it personality, right? Not only the Creator Son creates, the other types of beings in celestial hosts also create beings for their helpmates, right? Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, the fundamental question I haven't fully resolved personally is that so we have the personally we are in contact with God the Father through the personally circuit and through the thought adjuster, right?
Yeah.
And to me, it's not clear in my mind, at least. The difference. I mean, the difference.
Okay.
The most unclear one. I think I can understand better the thought adjuster than I can actually understand the personality in a way.
Yeah.
So, just not clear to me.
Well, you can think of it this way. The thought adjuster is an actual fragment of God, right? The personality circuit is a communication with God, right? That's the difference.
But we communicate with the thought adjuster.
We communicate with the thought adjuster, and what circuit would he use to communicate? See, he may, but there may be a whole different connection because it is part of God, that thought adjuster. That thought adjuster communicates directly with God. Because when they talk about worship and we're going to get to that maybe today. When they talk about worship, worship is the only thing that goes directly to God, right? The only thing. Prayer doesn't, okay? Supplications doesn't, right? But worship does. When you pray, it's a local function, isn't it? When you pray, it goes through the Creator Son, to the Son of God. You know, there's a whole circuit it goes through for your prayers. If it's something local, it stops local. But worship is not that way. It goes directly to God. When you adore God, it goes to God. It doesn't go to the Son. It doesn't go through anyway. Now, we can worship through the Son, can't we? But that still goes directly to God. Okay, see, that's the difference. It's interesting concept. It really is. Jill, would you take the next, the approach to God?
The approach to God. The inability of the finite creature to approach the infinite Father is inherent, not in the Father's aloofness, but in the finiteness and material limitations of created beings. The magnitude of the spiritual difference between the highest personality of universe existence and the lower groups of created intelligence is inconceivable. Were it possible for the lower orders of intelligence to be transported instantly into the presence of the Father himself, they would not know they were there. They would there be just as oblivious of the presence of the universal Father as where they now are. There is a long road ahead of mortal man before he can consistently and within the realms of possibility ask for safe conduct into the paradise presence of the universal Father. Spiritually, man must be translated many times before he can attain a plane that will yield the spiritual vision which will enable him to see even any one of the seven master spirits.
Okay. There's a lot in this paragraph too. Okay. First of all, they talk about if we could be transported instantly to the presence of God the Father, we wouldn't even know we were there, would we? Because we're human. Okay? We wouldn't be able to discern the fact that we were in front of God, would we? And probably because of our limited vision, we would not even be able to discern the brightness of paradise where God the Father would be, wouldn't they? Okay? So that's the first thing. First they tell us about the thought adjuster and how God is within us. Then they tell us if we could be transported to the presence of God. What is the difference? They're talking about the dwelling place of the original first sources of God the Father, right, paradise, compared to the Father fragment that's within us. Okay? That's the first thing we need to understand. I hate to do this thing after this is going to drive me crazy. And then they go on to say that there's a long road before we get to God the Father. What's that? That's our paradise ascent, right? And that we must be translated many times. Now, what are they talking about there?
The evolution when we go on to different mansion worlds.
That's right.
To
as we
get
go
translated into different bodies,
That's
different.
right.
The evolution of our spirit.
The evolution
Yeah.
of our spirit. 590 or is it 70? 590 different Marancha bodies, right? And then we have all the spiritual bodies. Do y'all realize when you get your spiritual body, you got to be tweaked for that too? You know, you think, well, all the tweaking's done in the Marancha, but that's not true. As you go on through the seven levels of Havona, you get tweaked again for each level that you're able to discern. The difference is you don't go to sleep for those, right? And then the difference is when you get to the capital of, when you get to Jerusalem, you don't go to sleep for the tweaking on the Marancha levels anymore either, do you? So you never lose consciousness, but you have this new body that's been tweaked each time to allow you to understand and see more, right?
What's the significance of just a little bit above that? The ask for safe conduct. Why safe?
Because if you tried to go from this body, okay, to the mansion world right now, okay, you would be in a physical location, wouldn't you? All right? All beings are on physical planets. But the planet of the first mansion world is not hospitable to a human being, okay? You could not get safe passage there unless they translated you, right? So if you got in a spaceship and you went to the first, if you could do this, okay, and you went to the first mansion world and you got out of the spaceship, would you be able to breathe? Probably not. Would you be able to withstand the temperatures or the whatever is going on as atmosphere on the mansion world? Probably not. Because why? You're a physical human.
Well, there are some physical beings on the mansion worlds.
Yes, but they are built for the mansion worlds.
Right.
Okay? That's the difference. Now, the other thing is this. What else would be considered safe or non-safe? How about rebellion? Okay? If you had gone into rebellion and you tried to land on the first mansion world, okay, you're a rebellious spirit, you think they would let you stay there? No. You would not be safe, why? For the other beings that's there, would you? It's kind of like you don't put oil in water.
How would they move you?
They have beings that do just that. Okay, it's part of the universal sensors. They can transport you. The other being that could do that would be what? We just studied these. Archangels. That's right. That's right. They can physically remove you from a planet. You know, when you studied the Lucifer rebellion, what was one of the things that Lucifer was complaining about? The agents of the Ancients of Days removing beings, right? I'm sure when a rebellious spirit decides to rebel and they come and get it, they don't leave free will, do they? They're forcibly removed, right? When they put these beings into seclusion, when they came and got the midwayers, you think they volunteered to go? Not likely. You know, they had to physically remove their spiritual being, right?
And they removed Lucifer?
And they removed Lucifer too. When they put him in chains, you think he went on his own? Of course he didn't. That's what he's talking about during the Lucifer Manifesto. He's saying that he tried to tell everybody that all beings would survive if it weren't for the henchmen of the your Ancients of Days, right? And that's not true.
And then he succumbed to the henchmen of the Ancients of Days.
That's right.
Poetic justice.
Yes. Okay.
I'm thinking like a human.
So there's a couple different definitions of what safely is, right?
Yeah, I guess you said it. You know, one aspect is that we are just not adapted to be there.
That's right.
You know, it's like if you were transported to live under the ocean without the equipment. Well, we are meant to breathe. We cannot breathe in water like fish. Right? So the same way fish, if you take them out of the water and bring them in our element, they'll die. It cannot be safe for them. Kind of, and then the same thing goes, you know, psychologically. And you know, we have a certain environment we are made to do, and we evolve at a certain pace. If all of a sudden we go somewhere that is completely out of, you know, our norm, we need to. It's unsafe because we need to have a slow progression. We cannot go too fast.
Why do you think a superlative travels with you when you leave Havana and go to paradise?
To protect you?
Protect you from what? They protect you in the sense of this. They protect you to make sure that the personality that they leave with, your spiritual body and your personality, is the same person when you arrive. In other words, you don't arrive and they try to stick you in another body, all right? That's part of the assurance of the transport of the supernafim. When you wake up, they guarantee you are who you were, right? good example of that was we were watching Shield last night, one of the episodes of Shield that was recorded, Marvel Shield, and they had this guy that got killed, okay? And so the episode was about when they killed him, they brought him back to life. It had been several days, you know, and they didn't said that wasn't possible. And they show this picture of this guy laying down in this machine is putting his brain back together type thing, you know. And so when he woke up, he was not sure he was the same person anymore. You know, that was his concern. And it's that along the same lines of what we're talking about, you know. When you go from your physical body to your Maracha body, you want to be sure that you're the same person you left with, right?
And there are books written about walk-ins too. You know, there have been some movies done on it
Yeah.
where someone dies and then another soul walks into that body and takes it
Takes
over.
its place, type
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And
So it's just an assurance, and it's like insurance.
I wonder if, I suppose there has never been any mistake in the.
Huh?
I would imagine there has never been any mistake in the.
I wouldn't think so. Anyway, I really wouldn't. You know, they make too much.
You would make for good movies, huh?
Yeah, I make for good movies. It was an interesting episode that way. You know, but it's funny how on TV sometimes shows we watch and things like that have little nuggets of interesting truth in them. You know, and even something like the comic books series, you know, Marvel and things like that. They've got little nuggets that seem to come from. It's like they're preparing us for greater concepts constantly in our lives. You know, we just have to look for them. You know, have you ever gone to a movie and you sit and you thought, "Gosh, that reminds me of a guardian angel or a thought adjuster," or you know, just a lot of different things. There's usually a reason for that. You know, that's part of our guardian angels in the background, preparing us for what? Putting things in our pathways and getting us ready for our next lesson. And so you just have to be aware of it. You'll catch them.
One movie that I particularly enjoyed is The Matrix. If you set aside the whole, you know, mumbo jumbo violence in there,
Uh-huh.
and you really get into the story,
Yeah.
I found it very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting parallels, aren't they? And,
Yeah.
and things like that. Yeah.
I
Okay.
watched it 3 times, and I still need to watch it another
Yep.
3.
I know. That's one of those movies.
It is a lot to take
Yeah,
in,
lots
isn't
of
it?
things.
You know.
Yeah.
But
Pam,
we used to ride on those birds.
On what?
On those birds.
Yeah.
Back in the early part,
Mm-hmm. Adam and Eve.
we
Yeah.
used to ride on those birds.
Yeah.
So where did they come up with that?
Good question.
Well, James Cameron actually, when he did, what's the name of the story?
Oh, gosh.
Were the ones that just came out. We've seen it like 4 times. I got it at home, but the bird.
Avatar.
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 James Cameron wrote that, but he had to have studied the Urantia book. And he did. What was the other one that he did that we saw about the ocean, where they had the beings in the ocean?
Oh, gosh, that's
The
one of my
Abyss.
favorites. The Abyss.
The Abyss. And James Cameron, many years ago, did that movie. And so he had to have had the experience of reading the Urantia book. There's just no way he didn't.
Interesting part of Avatar is just what we were talking about. You know, they placed this guy into this vessel that was a body, right, on Avatar, and you know that it's kind of the same principle. You know, assuring that you're you when you wake up. You know, it's kind of interesting. Pam, would you take the next slide, please?
Yeah. Our Father is not in hiding. He is not in arbitrary seclusion. He has mobilized the resources of divine wisdom in a never-ending effort to reveal himself to the children of his universal domains. There is an infinite grandeur and inexpressive generosity connected with the majesty of his love, which causes him to yearn for the association of every created being who can comprehend, love, or approach him. And it is therefore the limitations inherent in you, inseparable from your finite personality and material existence, that determine the time and place and circumstances in which you may achieve the goal of the journey of mortal ascension and stand in the presence of the Father at the center of all things.
Isn't it interesting that the Father yearns for our love? You know, we all do the same thing. we all want to be loved, and we want to be loved in return, don't we? You know, and part of that is this heavenly connection, isn't it?
I think that it's a little bit different from, what I heard you say. It's like, I think that if I was God, the reason why I would yearn for my creatures to love me is because of not the satisfaction, but knowing that they're evolving. It makes you happy.
It benefits them, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you're happy for them.
It's a
And
non-selfish.
that's why you're yearning for it.
That's
That's
right.
right, non-selfish.
Non-selfish. That's right.
But which also means that those who have no capabilities of that sounds to imply that it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. It really doesn't, does it? And it goes on to say, circumstance in which you may achieve the goal of the journey of mortal ascension and stand in the presence of the Father, the center of all things. Right? So that is really our goal in life, isn't it? The mortal ascension. Think about it.
And that's the fulfillment of God's will, too.
That's fulfillment of God's will. That's right. Okay. All right. Steve, would you take the next one?
Okay. Although the approach to the paradise presence of the Father must await your attainment of the highest finite levels of spiritual progression, you should rejoice in the recognition of the ever-present possibility of immediate communion with the bestowal spirit of the Father, so intimately associated with your inner soul and your spiritualizing self.
It's interesting there they call it the bestowal spirit, right? They're talking about the adjuster, aren't they? So just as Jesus was bestowed on his 7 bestowals into the personality and the bodies of the beings he was, the adjuster is going through a bestowal with us, isn't he? He's being bestowed on us to become a permanent part of us, right?
Okay, and then it also says your attainment, and I just happened to look that up. It's to gain or arrive at by exertion of body or mind, achieve as a desired purpose or state. So we need to have that concept that we're trying to attain a certain level with him.
Right.
And it's going to be an exertion on our part, and it's a training of our mind to do that because he's waiting on us to be there.
It's an
Okay.
effort thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
this is something that we have to, go, hey, it's here, it's available, but now we got to do what's necessary, and then we can look at the spirit progression, the levels of, and what are those?
All right, let's go on. The mortals of the realm of time and space may differ greatly in innate abilities and intellectual endowment. They may enjoy environments exceptionally favorable to social advancement and moral progress, or they may suffer from the lack of almost every human aid to culture and supposed advancement in the arts of civilization. But the possibilities for spiritual progress and the ascension career are equal to all. Increasing levels of spiritual insight and cosmic meanings are attained quite independently of all such social moral differentials of the diversified material environments of the evolutionary world. Now this is what we were just talking about, isn't it? Doesn't matter what your culture is, doesn't matter what your environment is, doesn't matter what benefits you have in this world, we all have an equal possibility of the ascension career, don't we?
I'd say the difference would be in the struggle for some versus others.
That's right.
That would
That's
be,
right.
the situation that we'd be faced with here.
Well,
It's just a matter of what we're having to deal with to achieve a certain level.
and sometimes, and I mentioned this the other night when we were talking about the guardian angels, sometimes a life of ease is not the blessing, is it? It's the life of struggle
Agreed.
is the blessing, because we learn more lessons by going through the struggle than we do through the easy times. And that is a hard pill to swallow. I said that the other night too. It really is. So when you're struggling with something, think about the blessing that you'll receive by figuring this out.
Yeah, I don't think the struggle is really that much of the hindrance. It might take a while to grasp a concept of a
And
better
understand it.
situation,
Yeah.
but once you do, I think, if you're not struggling that much, it's just not as important to you.
Yeah, and if you're not struggling some, it makes you want to look at yourself and say, wait a minute, I may be doing something wrong. Because that's what we're kind of here for, aren't we? To learn our lessons.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
However, Urantia mortals may differ in their intellectual, social, economic, and even moral opportunities and endowments. Forget not that their spiritual endowment is uniform and unique. They all enjoy the same divine presence of the gift from the Father, and they are equally privileged to seek intimate personal communion with this indwelling spirit of divine origin, while they may all equally choose to accept the uniform spiritual leading of these mystery monitors.
Okay, so we all have that same opportunity, don't we? Right?
As long as we choose.
As
So the
long
question
as
is,
we choose.
why do some people choose and some choose differently?
That's
I-
a good
That
question.
would be your social environment could have a lot to do with it, and then maybe you'll get into contact with somebody, because at the same point we're here with these influences, but then there's other influences that are watching us and constantly probing situations to get us onto an ascension program. It's just a matter of if we're aware of that little probing that's going on, I would think. They're just that constant influence. They look at our situation and say, well, this person might be able to help this person and throw in a connection there or something.
If you think about it, we all have opportunities in our life where we can help one another. We really do.
Mhm.
And when Jesus always talked about the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, that's exactly what he meant as the brotherhood of man. And part of our lessons is not only doing what we can for ourselves to advance our souls, but what? Help others advance theirs, right?
Mhm.
And it makes you wonder, Jill, how much of that, when you see people in situations like you're talking about, how much of that is not there for us to have the opportunity to help them along, and in turn gives them the opportunity to repeat that same lesson over for someone else. I don't know, but it makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? It really does. Because we know socially, economically, situation-wise, we have such a diverse world. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of different situations people live in daily. Some of them do not look comfortable. Some of them, I would not want to live that way, And, we have countries where people have grown up their whole lives in war, every minute of their existence,
Mhm.
And so I can't stress enough that we are blessed beyond words just to live in this country. We really are. We can complain about a lot of different things, but when you look at it, America, most people have some kind of food they can eat, and they usually have some place to sleep, And there's many places around the world that's not the case, And it's not the Father loves them any less, it's just a situational situation, right? When they get to the mansion worlds, we'll all be even. But we all start out at very diverse, different places. And that's part of that getting to know people when we get to the mansion world and the lessons we have to learn when we get to the mansion world. We're dealing with people that started from backgrounds that are nothing like us,
Well, and that's when we become teachers to help.
That's when we become
Yeah,
teachers,
others.
to help them help others. Also, we become pupils because we have to learn where they came from, what they're thinking, what kind of background they came from, what their concept of God is, what their concept of being holy is, right? And doing the will of God is. It's totally different. People think, it's really funny, everybody thinks you're going to get to heaven and sit around and sing songs and praise God all day. And that's where the work starts, is when we get to heaven. When we get to the mansion worlds. We really start our real life at that point.
One question, somewhere in the book I read that you can be ascending and then you come back,
That's right. If you, all
you
right.
fail.
No. When you get to the mansion worlds, every 10 days, mansion world time, you're advanced till you get to the planet where you're spiritually at, okay? But when you get to that planet, you still have to go back to all the previous planets that you skipped over and teach those coming along on those planets to gain the experience of those other mansion worlds. Even though your standing might be, let's say, mansion world number 6, you still have to go 1 through 5 and spend time there and experience those, because there's lessons on those that you need to learn also. What's a good advanced example of that? Let's take John the Baptist. He got through all the mansion worlds in the capital in 2,000 years, right? Spiritually, his mindset was probably the 6th or 7th mansion world, right? So when he got there, he spent 10 days on each mansion world until he got to his home mansion world. But what did they do? Shortly after he got there, they sent him back to gain the experience of the others on short stays on each one of them, teaching and bringing those people along, and in doing that, he's gaining the experience of those people, right? And that's the way it works. So the work really starts when you hit the mansion worlds, doesn't it?
And that work goes into the Supreme.
And that work goes into the Supreme, the experience of the Supreme.
Well, one thing you were saying about, it's about helping your fellow man. And when we look at that, a lot of times our biggest struggle is what's going on with our fellow man. And they even said, I think, that angels weep for you, figuratively, because they're sitting here watching your struggle and they're going, how does this go on? So, that really influence you when you see that struggle there,
Yeah.
So it's hard, you're not going to be really at the peace and rest that God has for you as long as there's somebody out there struggling with these issues,
And you look at on our own planet, if you transport yourself to the middle of a battlefield, sitting and talking about spiritual things is not practical, is it?
No.
They're worried about whether they're going to survive that night. They're worried about whether they're going to die, whether they're going to have something to eat. So you have to take people where they are. If you go talk to a starving man, he's not going to hear a word you say until you feed him, right? So there's a lot more to it than just the spiritual side. There's all the other things associated with it, isn't there?
Basics.
The basics.
Food,
That's right.
shelter.
That's right. Okay. We ready to go on?
Man is spiritually indwelt by a surviving thought adjuster.
That's right.
Is this the right place?
Yes.
Did I skip over
I know, 16.
that? Huh?
It's 16, 516.
Didn't you read?
5 what?
Didn't
516
you read if mortal
there?
man is wholeheartedly spiritually motivated?
No, that one we
No, I
have
did
read.
15. I did that one, 15, so we're on 16.
15 here, what do you?
I just finished, I read 15.
Okay. If mortal man is wholeheartedly spiritually motivated, unreservedly consecrated to the doing of the Father's will, then since he is so certainly and so effectively spiritually endowed by the indwelling and divine adjuster, there cannot fail to materialize in that individual's experience the sublime consciousness of knowing God and the supernal assurance of surviving for the purpose of finding God by the progressive experience of becoming more and more like Him.
Okay. There's a big if here, isn't there? Okay? What does it say here? Spiritually motivated, unreservedly consecrated, and doing the Father's will. That's the first part, right? Okay? And if he is that, right, then he's indwelled by the, he's spiritually endowed by the indwelling divine adjuster. Then he cannot fail to materialize in that individual experience the consciousness of knowing God, right? But How many men are wholeheartedly spiritually motivated? That's the question, right?
Like I say, we got very few at this point.
We
but,
may have very few,
it might
but
be
that's a
technique.
requirement, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so.
That's a requirement.
Mhm.
So, that's part of what we need to learn to do, is spiritually motivate individuals, don't we?
Well, it's more difficult because we live in the world. If we were in like a cloistered order or, or in a monastery, it would be
Much easier.
much easier because your environment is conducive to that.
That's right.
But living in the world is challenging.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of focus.
Okay, I've been looking at this, and let's see. If you look at the angels and stuff, and like they have different things that they have questions about, and things of that nature, but they are totally committed to God. Okay, I mean that's the primary thing. Their loyalty to God, regardless of their questions, regardless of anything else, they have that loyalty. And then, for us, it would be we have to have loyalty and then the promise, okay, of a better time to come, a better thing. And then we do that with faith and trust. Okay, now that tells us that we're in the world but not of the world. And then they say if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Okay, so a lot of times we put our own struggles right in front of us, you see, and by developing these qualities, then the struggles are just handled in a whole different manner. To where we think we have to struggle, they're telling us you don't have to struggle. What you have to have is this faith, this trust, this total loyalty, and then all these things that you think you're going to be struggling with, Jesus said, God knows you need those things. So somehow they get provided. And it doesn't exclude, because you've seen Jesus struggle with his physical life as he was here, but he always kept the will of the Father first and foremost. So it's just, I think we're tied up in our physical concepts and having a tough time developing the spiritual concepts that they're trying to impart on us.
And that's why they
Okay.
call us faith sons of God.
Yeah.
We're not real sons of God until we hit, we fuse with our adjuster, right? So until then, it's only by faith that we are sons of God.
Yeah, that's
Really, it's
it.
about faith.
hmm Instead of concerns about life.
That's right. That's right. Jill, would you take the next place?
Man is spiritually indwelt by a surviving thought.
I think did I skip over one?
Nope, that's it.
Huh? I'm on the wrong slide then.
I read the one before it. Wholehearted, spiritually motivated.
117. 17.
1-7? We should be on one. I missed a slide. On the slide. That's why I missed one. So there. I'll have to fix that. Hang on. I'll give you a second. I sure did. Okay, y'all go ahead and read it.
Man is spiritually indwelt by a surviving thought adjuster. If such a human mind is sincerely and spiritually motivated, if such a human soul desires to know God and become like Him, honestly wants to do the Father's will, there exists no negative influence of moral deprivation, nor positive power of possible interference, which can prevent such a divinely motivated soul from securely ascending to the portals of paradise.
I kind of think that explains what I was just talking
It
about.
was. That's a
You
restatement
know?
of what you just said. All right. I can't believe I skipped over a slide there. 517, dear. I need to fix it on this slide presentation. Okay. All right. Now we're at 5-8.
The Father desires all his creatures to be in personal communion with him. He has on paradise a place to receive all those whose survival status and spiritual nature make possible such attainment. Therefore, settle in your philosophy now and forever. To each of you and to all of us, God is approachable, the Father is attainable, the way is open. The forces of divine love and the ways and means of divine administration are all interlocked in an effort to facilitate the advancement of every worthy intelligence of every universe to the paradise presence of the universal Father.
Isn't that wonderful? What a beautiful, beautiful paragraph that is. Okay? So it's all attainable, right? God's approachable. And his divine love is always there. How can you say anything more than that? You know? Okay. Stephen, would you take the next one?
All right. The fact that vast time is involved in the attainment of God makes the presence and personality of the infinite none the less real. Your ascension is a part of the circuit of the 7 super universes, and though you swing around it countless times, you may expect in spirit and in status to be ever swinging inward. You can depend upon being translated from sphere to sphere, from the outer circuits, ever nearer the inner center, and someday, doubt not, you shall stand in the divine and central presence and see him, figuratively speaking, face to face. It is a question of the attainment of actual and literal spiritual levels, and these spiritual levels are attainable by any being who has been indwelt by a mystery monitor and who has subsequently eternally fused with that thought adjuster.
So they tell us it takes a long, long time to get there, don't they? And our key to the pathway is what? Adjuster fusion, right?
I think one thing we can look at on that too is as we advance as a planet, that time gets shortened because, you know, everybody's a little more spiritually aware. They don't have the struggles that, you know, like, well, we'll say cavemen. I don't know if we got cavemen, but, you know, the struggles are different. The knowledge is more available. So this process is going to, you know, take a shorter and shorter time for man to get there.
You know, and unfortunately, we still have quite a few cavemen still out there, don't we?
In the mountains, you know, I think my neighbors are.
I think we have a few in the House of Congress too.
Yeah, we've had a few in Congress too. That's right. You know, it's funny though, Millie, they didn't put that on their advertising signs in the yard, did they? Elect me, cavemen. All right. The Father is not in spiritual hiding, but so many of his creatures have hidden themselves away in the midst of their own willful decisions, and for the time being have separated themselves from the communion of his Spirit and the Spirit of his Son by choosing of their own perverse ways and by the indulgence of the self-assertiveness of their intolerant minds and unspiritual natures. Okay, so we as children of God make these decisions ourselves, and it's our own intolerant minds and unspiritual natures that keep us away from the pathway to God.
That's it. And so it's that, you know, we spend a lot of time here in the physical world, but it's really that renewing of the mind. It's that constant looking at every thought. How does that make me feel about God, about man, you know, and analyzing that, refiling it, rechanging it, and, you know, constantly bringing that new awareness
Over and over.
Oh yeah, it's a constant
It's a daily thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
If I may add, in the context of the discussion we had a few minutes ago with the personally circuit and the thought adjuster, kind of my view at least of it is that the personality is that ignorant part that has the power of making decisions.
Yeah.
It's like we're here the personality. I don't know anything about it, but I can decide whatever I want. That's the
right.
personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thought adjuster is the other part of the puzzle that is I don't decide anything, but I know it all.
Yeah.
And of course we have learned that the whole point is for those two to mesh together, and having the personality work with the thought adjuster, and to evolve in terms of fusing through experience. But I thought that was worthwhile point.
And, you know, it's kind of interesting, Jill, too. It's the free will that keeps those two apart, isn't it? You know, you know, God has made our free will basically the most important thing in our life, you know. So we can choose to let God in, or we can choose not to. And it's all part of free will. And free will in the universe is always supreme. Isn't that amazing? Because God could have made us to just, the thought adjuster is going to control everything, you just go along for the ride.
Well, and then without thought adjuster, he has made personalities that were perfect, and
Yeah.
there is no way. Like think about the
Yeah.
Creator sons and many others,
Yeah.
right? They just don't falter, and they are equally free,
Yeah.
even more free than we are. They just don't. They were made perfect. So somewhere along the line, we have the same kind of power of will in a way,
Yeah.
but we are made in such a way that we can,
Choose.
by our ignorance,
Yeah.
I call it ignorance. I don't know if it's the right word, but where we can falter, but I think the value of faltering is that when we mess up and we, if I may say, get kicked in the butt as a result, it's
Yeah.
part of the experience, and the value of the experience is we get in the right direction through experience,
Yeah.
and so that has value to it.
It does.
I think, you know, it's like the proof is in the results, and we too often make excuses instead of saying, we're not getting the results, what do we need to do about it? You know what I'm saying? And we're just, you know, we're just kind of automatically, we got all kinds of excuses of why,
Denial.
instead of what, you know, how do we, you know, and I mean, we're sitting here with God, you know, and He's got answers for all these things, and yet we don't even ask the question, you know, because we're just sitting here in our own little thing, you know, waiting on something.
Well, there is another aspect of it, right? And that's kind of complicated. Is that I think there are some questions that are not for God. Yeah, God is spirit, and He's going to answer the spiritual aspect of it, and He's going to provide us the spiritual guidance. I'm not so sure that at all levels He drive, you know, every single aspect. What I mean by that is that I remember very specifically at one point in my life I was at a critical turn with respect to my career when I was a student. Was I going to go into that school or that school? Right. And I prayed. Believe me, I prayed. And perhaps it's my incapacity to receive the result of the prayer. Yeah, perhaps. But I strongly felt that it didn't matter.
Yeah. His response would have been probably,
What you
doesn't
like.
matter which one you take, I'll go with you either direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, which means that at that point in my life, I felt, for right or for wrong, that from a spiritual perspective, it didn't matter.
I would agree with that. You know that you know you're on a certain level, and you know I think too many times we try to get God to change everything for us, and yet everything's a benefit to us if we just look for it. You know, so I think here we're supposed to have problems. If we didn't have problems, why would we need God? You know, so it's not a matter of having the problems. It's who do we choose to solve it for us, you know? Do we choose our faith and trust that everything's going to work out, or do we get angry, agitated, start stealing, hitting people, you know? That's the other route that we choose, you know, simply because of a problem, you know? So it's just a matter of who we're going to follow in that regard there.
Let's keep going.
Mortal man may draw near God and may repeatedly forsake the divine will so long as the power of choice remains. Man's final doom is not sealed until he has lost the power to choose the Father's will. There is never a closure of the Father's heart to the need and the petition of His children. Only do His offspring close their hearts forever to the Father's drawing power when they finally and forever lose the desire to do His divine will. to know him and to be like him. Likewise is man's eternal destiny assured when a just refusion proclaims to the universe that such an ascender has made the final and irrevocable choice to live the Father's will.
So man can choose not to survive, right? That's what they're talking about here. You can choose not to do the will of the Father, and you're dooming yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can think of it as cosmic suicide, can't you? You know, and you can choose in this world to commit cosmic suicide by cutting off the will of God in your life.
You can choose in the next world too.
You can choose in the next world too.
Well, I
People think that you can get to the mansion worlds and you're in like Flint. Not necessarily. You can still choose non-survival when you get to the mansion worlds.
Well, I feel like there's several levels, right? There's the level of those who've never gotten to make some key decisions, right?
Yes.
That may not be saved. I feel like it is the, you know, when Jesus was saying, let's go save some people, right? It's like getting them started, right? So there are those who don't even get started for, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but something like that. Then there are those who are just pure evil. So maybe they're in the same bag, but
Yeah. Well, not necessarily, because if they're pure evil, Jill, then they've already made a decision to go against God. Where those who haven't decided, that's differently. They have not made a conscious decision to go against God. So I think there's still a possibility for them.
then I may relate an experience, not personal experience, but I was just told this week that could be in that. That's the case of Hitler. Hitler, there is a coworker of mine who had a grandfather, or the grandfather of her husband, who actually was in the German army, like my grandfather, by the way, but ended up meeting Hitler twice.
Yeah.
Early on, when Hitler was like so energetic and okay, and I'm going to save the country and we're going to do this and economically, and he was impressed and everyone was behind him. And then towards the end, toward the retreat, and he was going to, as an officer, he was going to meet Hitler. And someone told him, do not falter. And what she was telling me is that, according to her, from that grandfather himself, is that when he went to shake hands with Hitler, he felt such a power of evil that he had a little step back. But he remembered, do not falter. So he kept his composure and ended up going through, because those who didn't, they were set aside and being executed. So the point here is probably an extreme case, and there are many others. I think others like those who are in politics and who are corrupted, and some very smart, very brilliant.
Yeah.
Those guys have had a chance to think, but they make conscious decisions in terms of drawing selfishly the power that they have for themselves. I'm going to make money, I'm going to be corrupt, and I'm going to do this for this power, for this, not for the benefit of people. So whether it's Hitler or all those people, those have made some conscious decisions, whether they are final and completely evil or not. Those have made some pretty bad decisions
Yeah.
against the will of God.
The thing that brings to my mind is the worker at the airport who had okayed one of the 9/11 passengers to go through. She said that she realized afterwards that he had such a corrupt, evil presence about him, and so she was really very sad that she had.
Yeah, upset that she
Yeah.
let him pass.
Yeah.
You can detect someone's energy like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I go to a group that I meet with, and there's a lot of negativity going on. I go home and I have to take a nap. It's called energy vampires.
It's a drain, isn't it? Yeah.
Because,
Yeah. It just sucks the life right out of
yeah,
you.
so you try and stay away from,
Yeah.
if you were to be with him, he would pull
Right.
you into his energy. He would
If
take
you let yourself pull, but at least you feel something that is not right. And
so
these,
the people around him are in the same energy field as he is.
that's right.
Uh-huh.
And that's definitely evil, more consciously evil.
Consciously.
Right, so sinful.
Yes.
You know, the interesting thing about that too, Jill, is Hitler was probably one of the most popular politicians ever to come along in Germany, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And people loved him. You know, they thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Mhm.
You know, and yet he embraced this evil and fooled thousands and thousands and thousands of good German folks that thought that he was the best thing for the country.
Absolutely. And he was
He
until
started that way.
until the evil, and came,
Until he
he had
embraced
a
it.
lot of good ideas, and he had a great stamina, right?
Yeah.
He did a lot of good things for Germany, but he definitely had some obvious evil, and,
Yeah.
and based on the account of that personal experience from that person,
Yeah.
it really makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
It's not like just delusion or being, it seems like it was really like volitional.
Yeah.
Right? So that would be the second case, back to our discussion. But then there is the third group of people who are not particularly evil, who are not particularly
Good.
like
Mm.
who have evolved, who are intellectual, who can think, who have thought through it, and who got to contemplate, here is the plan of God, and have some level of understanding, and here is not. And in that situation, choose not to do the will of God and not to go with the ascension plan. That seems to be a third category in my mind, which is one of the most mind-boggling one.
Why would you do that?
How can you
Yeah.
know it?
It's like everybody
What-
wants to live.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
So why is that?
Yeah.
I think it's really because the groups so far that have formed, they start out good and then they kind of turn into an evil situation as they go along. They get self-centered on their bills and what they need as this, that, and the other, and they lose sight of God altogether, So in a lot of your organizations, it's just losing sight of the concept. You start out in one direction, and then all of a sudden, just like you say about Hitler, he started out in one direction, and he took all kinds of, just strange concepts. And our biggest evil thing is we start getting into the finances of it all, and how are we going to get these finances? Then all of a sudden, all these words come different when all you're looking for is how to make money,
Yeah.
And I think it's been a corrupting force for man. But I think that's going to get resolved sometime here. It's just maybe that other step of knowledge or influence that hasn't really come to our hearts yet. We still have too much tied up into this physical world to say, hey, we can shake this off and move on,
Well, let's keep going, y'all.
Okay.
Who's next? Millie?
Me,
Yeah, I think so.
great. The great God makes direct contact with mortal man and gives a part of his infinite and eternal and incomprehensible self to live and dwell within him. God has embarked upon the eternal adventure with man. If you yield to the leadings of the spiritual forces in you and around you, you cannot fail to attain the high destiny established by a loving God as the universe goal of his ascendant creatures from the evolutionary worlds of space.
So what's the key to that? If you yield to the leadings of the spiritual forces
Listen
in
to
you,
your thought adjuster.
yeah, and around you. That's right. That's right. We have to choose to do that. All right. Jill, would you take the next one?
The presence of God. The physical presence of the infinite in the reality of the material universe. I'm sorry. The physical presence of the infinite is the reality of the material universe. The mind presence of deity must be determined by the depth of individual intellectual experience and by the evolutionary personality level. The spiritual presence of divinity must of necessity be differential in the universe. It is determined by the spiritual capacity of receptivity and by the degree of the consecration of the Creator's will to the doing of the divine will.
Okay, so basically what this is saying, that that the physical presence of God, right, is the reality of the material universe. That in which we see as part of the natural outcroppings of God the Father.
Are we talking here about the energy?
We're talking about energy, matter, all of it, right? Spiritual forces, divinal forces, all of it is the outcropping of God the Father, if you think about it. Everything, we live and breathe and have our being in whom? God. All that we are, even this physical existence that we have, right? And then it goes on to tell us that the mind presence of deity must be determined individually, doesn't it? Each one of us have to make that own evolutionary, personal level of experience decisions, right? That's what it's talking about here. And the degree of our own spiritual receptivity and the consecration of our own will to doing the will of God, right? That's what they're talking about.
Okay.
It's all about us.
When I look up the receptivity there, it's able to incline to receive as truths or impressions, and then a mental image formed by the repetition of related precepts with reinforced of common characteristics. In other words, it's just that we have to constantly be working in our mind to establish the will of the Father.
That's right. Be open to receiving it.
There you go. In other words, we're kind of prone to, we want to see something in the physical universe.
Yeah. That's why
instead of the training of our mind to know Him.
That's why we want to pray for things, isn't it? We want to pray for things constantly. Things. Our whole world is things.
Uh-huh.
You think about it.
Yeah.
We want better cars. We want better furniture. We want better food, better kids, better.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's like we can't get enough of anything, can we? Are we grateful for what we got? No.
No, it's another thing we need.
That's right. That's right.
Back several paragraphs. Therefore, settle in your philosophy now and forever.
Now and forever. That's
Mhm.
right. That's right.
Set your mind to it.
There you
That's
go.
it.
There you go. And we just really, I guess we have gotten so caught up into this physical universe that we really haven't spent the time necessary to develop that other reality. And I think once we do that, we will find that the reality of Him is real reality, and this is nothing but an illusion.
Yeah.
This is just a part we play because of our confusion.
Well, back up more paragraphs again. Choosing of their own perverse ways and by the indulgence of the self-assertiveness of their intolerant minds. That's where he was. That's where Hitler was.
Mhm.
He
Perverse ways and
and self-assertiveness. I got it going now. I can do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Lucifer.
Yeah. Mhm.
They become their own God, don't they?
Yes.
There you go.
That's what they're trying to do.
Well, and the more power that you have,
The more you
The
want.
more
the
you
more
feel like God, right?
corrupt you
That's
are.
right.
Yeah.
That's
God lives in every one of His spirit-born sons. The Paradise Sons always have access to the presence of God, the right hand of the Father, and all of His creature personalities have access to the bosom of the Father. This refers to the personality circuit whenever, wherever, and however contacted, or otherwise entails personal, self-conscious contact and communion with the Universal Father, whether at the central abode or at some other designated place, as on one of the 7 sacred spheres of paradise.
Okay, now, you've heard this term a million times, maybe not a million, thousands of times in your life, the bosom of the Father, haven't you?
I haven't.
No? You haven't? Oh gosh,
But
when I was growing up in the Baptist church, I used to hear this all the time.
But I didn't go to church, so.
Yeah, yeah, the bosom of the Father.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah, the bosom of the Father. Now you know what it is. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now what it is. From according to your Incha book, it's the personality circuit of the Father. Okay, that's the bosom of the Father. So if we live in the personality circuit, which we do, right? Where are we all the time?
In the bosom of the Father.
We're in the bosom of the Father. Who's at the right hand of the Father? The Creator sons, right? They sit on the right hand of the Father. Why is that? Because it's through the working of the infinite Son that the Creator sons work. And who does the work? The Creator Son. It's the arm of God, isn't it? Think about it. All the physical labor, the creationism, all this, that's the right hand of the Father. Okay? Makes sense? The Creator Son does the work. We enjoy the bosom. Right? Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
It's really
What
simple.
does he mean bosom in that in the first degree? What is it?
In other words, it held
The
closely.
boobs or the guts?
The
No.
bosom, the boobs.
The boobs are the bosom?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. We're suckling off the love of God. That's what it means. Right? Think about that. As a mother, mothers knows exactly what this is. Why does a child attach themselves to the mother? It's the nourishment, isn't it? They know innately that it's the mother that's going to protect them, provide for them, love for them. That's the bosom of the Father. And the difference is the bosom of the Father does it spiritually instead of physically. Right? That makes sense?
Mhm.
That's what the bosom of the Father is. Okay? And it goes on to say, this refers to the personality circuit whenever, wherever, and however contacted. Doesn't matter. Right? And then it also says self-conscious contact and union with the universal Father, and it doesn't matter where it is, does it? That's what they're saying here. So we're in constant contact with God the Father. Think about that. And who's his sons? That's his right hand. Okay. Stephen?
The divine presence cannot, however, be discovered anywhere in nature or even in the lives of God-knowing mortals so fully and so certainly as in your attempted communion with the indwelling mystery monitors, the paradise thought adjusters. What a mistake to dream of God far off in the sky when the Spirit of the Universal Father lives within your own mind.
It's not nature, is it? You can go
No.
outside and enjoy stuff all you want to. That's
Mhm.
not God, is it?
Mhm.
It's nature. Okay. A lot of people try to worship nature. They'll do it in a heartbeat, but that's not God. Okay? It is because of this God fragment that indwells you that you can hope as you progress in harmonizing with the adjuster's spiritual leadings more fully to discern the presence and the transforming power of those other spiritual influences that surround you and impinge upon you but do not function as an integral part of you. The fact that you are not intelligently conscious of close and intimate contact with the indwelling adjuster does not in the least disprove such an exalted experience. The proof of fraternity with the divine adjuster consists wholly in the nature and the extent of the fruits of the Spirit, which are yielded in the life experience of the individual believer. By their fruits you shall know them. Now, who said that? Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah.
Right? Okay? So it's the fruits of the experience, fruits of the Spirit that we can identify fellow believers, can't we? Look at what they do. Right? Look, find out if they're helping one another. Look and find out and see if they're loving one another. Having mouse problems here today. Okay.
It is exceedingly difficult for the meagerly spiritualized material mind of mortal man to experience marked consciousness of the spirit activities of such divine entities as paradise adjusters. As a soul of joint mind and adjuster creation becomes increasingly existent, there also evolves a new phase of soul consciousness, which is capable of experiencing the presence, and of recognizing the spirit leadings and other supermaterial activities of the mystery monitors.
Okay, so it's hard for us to spiritualize things in the material mind or consciously know these things are happening. But as we train our mind and we constantly do this and we learn more and more how to recognize the spiritual leadings, then we become more and more aware of those presences of those, right?
And their influences on our life, too.
And their influences on our life, that's right.
As we become aware of them.
Millie?
The entire experience of the Juster Communion is one involving moral status, mental motivation, and spiritual experience. The self-realization of such an achievement is mainly, though not exclusively, limited to the realms of soul consciousness, but the proofs are forthcoming and abundant in the manifestation of the fruits of the Spirit in the lives of all such inner spirit contactors.
So they keep telling us it's the fruits of the Spirit that makes us aware, isn't of this contact with the adjuster. The more we use it, the more we're aware of it.
Well, is it the awareness? The way I feel of it is the phenomenal question is when you pray and you do something, whatever that thing is, and that prayer can be just thinking, is that how do you know that you are doing the will of the Father versus doing your own will? At the end of the day, how do you know? If you look at the jihad, when they go bombing someone 9/11 or whatever they do, right? I mean, those guys, you look at them, they have faith in what they are doing. They truly believe they are doing the will of God, and they are like, So the question is, when you do something, right? How do you know that what you are doing is the will of God versus not, or the fruit of your imagination? I can say, hey, I want to bomb someone, and say it's the will of God. How do you know? Well, to me, that's this.
It's the fruits of the Spirit.
That's the fruit of the Spirit. You recognize that, how much you are being actually led by the Universal Father.
That's right. You're
Well,
right.
would killing anybody exhibit brotherhood of mankind?
That's right.
No.
Because the
Doesn't make
fatherhood
sense.
is not
Well-
the brotherhood of man. You don't kill him.
No.
Ultimately, we know the right and wrong. We do know. We all
do.
have the same source of right and wrong.
Yeah.
So we know how to recognize that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you cannot say, hey, I have that thought. That's from God. Or maybe some people can, but rarely can we do that.
Yeah.
And when it comes to external people, when you hear some people saying, I've been inspired. Okay, well, let's see what's the result of it, and then you know
Yeah.
whether you are rightly inspired or not.
Yeah. And we all think we are many times, and we're not, aren't we, Jim?
Yeah.
Many times in our life, you think that the direction you're going is an inspired direction, and one day you wake up and you say, maybe this was
Maybe it
mine.
wasn't.
Maybe it wasn't.
Absolutely, we don't know.
I think that
Ultimately, we don't know.
it can be used still as life's
We have-
experience.
We have to
To-
assume that we're going the right direction, go out on faith, don't we? But many times the decisions we make are the wrong ones, and the fruits of the Spirit will show that over a period of time, really. And it's tough to admit you're wrong. It is, and we all do it. I do it. We all do it. A smart man will know himself, right? Know when he's done something. Well, maybe this was not the direction God really wanted me to go. It's hard to set yourself aside and say, especially the pride. I know this was what I was supposed to do, but your pride gets in the way and it doesn't work out. It really doesn't.
Which brings another question, which is, it's basically emotions,
It is.
right? Because sometimes you think something, you feel, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to do this, or I think this way with respect to that. And sometimes you feel good about it, sometimes something's going on, but you don't really, at least I don't, sometimes, don't fully understand what's going on. So what do we do with that? What does it mean? Are those emotions the result of your intellect or your inner side or frustration or whatever? Can they be the result of some kind of the leading of a spiritual leading of some sort that doesn't get free across you, or perhaps cannot get free across you until you experience something?
Yeah.
No, these are questions.
I think sometimes we're just, not sure which way to go, and we're afraid to make a mistake, we still have to move forward.
Yeah.
It's hard to know sometimes.
Yeah, it really is. We all struggle with these questions. Well, we've experienced this here with our, trying to start the church and stuff, Really felt that was the direction we wanted to go, and really felt that this is what God wanted us to do. And it just did not come across the way we thought it was. One thing's for sure, my commitment to bring this book to the world is not weaned at all. We still have classes, we still teach, and I think people are benefiting from it. Daily I get emails from folks that benefit from what we do. But we still have small crowds, which is fine, But as long as God gives me a voice and will allow me to talk, I'm going to talk about this book, And hopefully He'll keep blessing all of us in this fellowship. I hope He does. But who knows?
I'm grateful for the Wednesday night Skypes.
Yeah, I am too.
I'm
I'm grateful
back
that
to that.
everyone that comes to it, because I benefit as much as the folks that do come with it too. And really the putting it online is just part of us spreading the word that this is out there, And
Well-
it doesn't matter what I say about it or what anybody says about it. All that it matters that people are exposed to it and let them make their own decisions. No one's an expert on this, I've studied it for a lot of years, and put my heart and soul in learning it and stuff, and I know it very well, but I can be wrong. We're all wrong about things, So, and we have to go with what we're led to do, and that's why we keep doing this,
I do believe as a study group, I get a lot deeper meanings out of the subject as I'm going over it, as opposed to just reading the book on my own, So I think they're very beneficial, for that.
Anybody can sit in home and read by themselves.
Yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
like,
Well, we have the
before a
interaction,
while.
different opinions, different input
Mhm.
from different people. We're learning from not one direction, we're learning from 6 different directions.
Yeah,
right?
we have the
Directions.
experience of 6 people.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes a big
And
difference.
that's what God gets.
Yeah,
He gets the experience of all of us.
that's right.
Mhm.
I mean, He knows what's going on,
Yeah,
but the more you react, He gets that experience. He gets her experience, and hers, and his, and mine. That's how
well,
He
I
goes.
can tell you the way I feel about this. I'm a teacher, always been a teacher. That's my mindset, okay? I like to teach this book, but that's really only one part of this. This teaching means nothing without the interaction of other people. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So, I can teach, I can stand in front of a camera, and teach all I want to. I don't need people to do that. But what I do need people for is this interaction, this feedback, back and forth. Because what I say about this book is not important. What people gain from listening to our discussion and learning and understanding this book is what's important. And I know that. If it wasn't me, it'd be somebody else come along to do this. That's the way I look at it, right? But my goal before I die, I'd like to get all the way through this book and at least have study groups or teach this book all the way through. Because the way we do this, we break this down into the smallest, minutest detail that we can and come away with the greatest understanding we can from each and everything. And some people don't like to study this way. They just don't. And that's okay. This is not meant for people that don't want to study this way.
I find that when I read, my brain seems to say that I understand all those words and everything, and I don't.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that's what I'm
only
here
in
for.
the conversation and whatnot.
Yeah.
So.
Well, see, that's what I feel like I'm here for, is help the understanding.
I
Yeah.
told people that I'm giving the book to that I find the best way is to start at the front and read the back. And I said, go ahead and read
Are you
from
burning
the
something?
front,
Debbie?
from the front to the back. you're not going to understand it, but your mind is going to take it in. And you won't understand the second part unless you've read the first part, sort of, and you won't understand the third part. You won't know what they're talking about unless you've got the first and second behind you. So when you get to the end, go back and start over again. Then you'll understand more of the first part. Then you'll understand more of the second part.
Well,
But they build on each other.
they all
Whether
do.
you comprehend it or not, it's in your head, and you will bring it up.
Well, and I always come back to, you cannot understand the life of Christ that's in the Urantia book unless you understand the first part of the book.
Where he's coming from, who he's talking to, where
What
these
he's talking
people are
about.
coming from.
Yes.
You haven't a clue
No.
unless you've read the first part of the book.
And it unlocks all the mysteries, doesn't it? It really unlocks all the
Yeah.
mysteries. So, anyway, that's what I feel. True worship, we might be able to get through one more section here. Did you
Yeah,
learn
2
anything?
pages an
It was
hour.
actually something burning in the oven on the bottom.
Yeah, let's
Oh,
try to
God.
get through one more section. We got about 10 more minutes here. All right, true worship.
It's usual.
All right.
Where are we?
True worship. Section 3.
True worship. Though the paradise deities, from the universe standpoint, are as one, in their spiritual relations with such beings as inhabit Urantia, they are also 3 distinct and separate persons. There is a difference between the Godheads in the matter of personal appeals, communion, and other intimate relations. In the highest sense, we worship the Universal Father and Him only. True, we can and do worship the Father as He is manifested in His Creator Sons, but it is the Father, directly or indirectly, who is worshipped and adored.
So it's only the Father that we worship. We can worship through the Creator Sons, can't we? Because He's who? He's the representative of God the Father, right? So it's okay to worship through the Creator Son, but ultimately worship goes to the Father, right? Okay. Here we go. Pam.
Supplications of all kinds belong to the realm of the Eternal Son and the Son's spiritual organization. Prayers, all formal communications, everything except adoration and worship of the Universal Father, are matters that concern a local universe. They do not ordinarily proceed out of the realm of the jurisdiction of a Creator Son. But worship is undoubtedly encircuited and dispatched to the person of the Creator by the function of the Father's personality circuit. We further believe that such registry of the homage of an adjuster indwelt creature is facilitated by the Father's spirit presence. There exists a tremendous amount of evidence to substantiate such a belief, and I know that all orders of Father fragments are empowered to register the bona fide adoration of their subjects, acceptably in the presence of the Universal Father. The adjusters undoubtedly also utilize direct pre-personal channels of communication with God, and they are likewise able to utilize the spirit gravity circuits of the Eternal Son.
So prayers stay locally, don't they, in the local universe, right? Adoration goes on through the local universe to where? To the Father through the personality circuit. Okay? That's pretty simple. Also, the adjuster indwelt worship, right, or relay of that worship, they believe goes through that same personality circuit. Okay? That's what we talked about a few minutes ago, a little bit early. They also go on to say that the Father fragments, or the adjusters, are able to register all bona fide adoration right directly to the presence of the Universal Father. Also, they believe that likewise the spirit gravity circuits of the Eternal Son are also useful in relaying information to the Father or worship to the Father. But so we know that if we pray for something, where does it stay?
Local.
local. It's a issue of the Creator Son and the Son of God, right? Anything other than worship is elsewhere, right? That makes sense? So when you pray for something, you can address the Father, but it's actually being handled as the Father's representative by whom? The Creator Son, right? All right. Stephen?
Worship, if it is for its own sake, prayer embodies a self or creature interest element. That is the great difference between worship and prayer. There is absolutely no self-request or other element of personal interest in true worship. We simply worship God for what we comprehend Him to be. Worship asks nothing and expects nothing for the worshiper. We do not worship the Father because of anything we may derive from such veneration. We render such devotion and engage in such worship as a natural and spontaneous reaction to the recognition of the Father's matchless personality and because of His lovable nature and adorable attributes.
Okay, so true worship gives nothing back to whom? Ourselves.
Ourself, right.
We worship for the benefit of God, right? When we start asking for things, what does it turn into?
A prayer.
Pray.
Now, is there a difference between worship and love? Because what they are describing, I can at least make it very practical with love. When you have someone who behave like great and you're like, wow, you love that person, you don't expect anything. It's not like, hey, give me a candy or something, right? You don't expect anything, but you enjoy that love. So,
But that's
is it the
not
same?
adoration. Adoration, to adore someone, is to want to be like them, to build your life around the essence of that being. And that's really what we're doing with God when we talk about worship. It's not just the love factor. It's wanting to love, be with, be like, transpose yourself into that same sort of being. Where, which you don't want to do that with your spouse, do you? You love your spouse. You
It's
want
a
to spend
different
your
kind
life.
of love.
It's a different kind of
you know,
love.
the-
They call it the agape love, right? In comparison to romantic love, right? There's a difference, And too bad we don't have two different terms for that, because we really need two different terms. What you feel for your wife or your husband or your loved one is totally different than the love and adoration you feel for God,
Or maybe it's a fragment.
or it's a fragment.
I like that, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or an outcropping of that.
yeah.
I like to think my marriage relationship's the outcropping of my spiritual relationships. Right, dear? If it's not, I'm thinking about this wrong. I've been wrong before, I'll be wrong again, I'm sure, once or twice. All right. Am I back up? When you deal with the practical affairs of your daily life, you're in the hands of the spirit personalities having origin in the third source and center. You are cooperating with the agencies of the conjoint actor. And so it is.
Didn't you miss one?
Did I skip over one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the moment, the element of.
Did I miss another paragraph?
Yes, you did. The moment the element of self-interest intrudes.
Oh,
You must have
Okay.
been tired.
okay.
There
Let
you
me try
It's
start again.
mental.
The moment an element of self-interest intrudes upon worship, that instant devotion translates from worship to prayer. We just talked about this. And more appropriately should be directed to the person of the eternal Son or the Creator Son. But in practical religious experience, there exists no reason why prayer should not be addressed to God the Father as part of true worship. We just talked about that, didn't we? Okay. Dear, would you take the next one then? I'll try to finish this little section here.
When you deal with the practical affairs of your daily life, you are in the hands of the spirit personalities having origin in the third source and center. You are cooperating with the agencies of the conjoint actor, and so it is, you worship God, pray to and commune with the Son, and work out the details of your earthly sojourn in connection with the intelligences of the infinite spirit operating on your world and throughout your universe.
Okay, so you see the three different parts there?
Mhm.
You worship the Father, right? You pray to the Son, right? And commune with the Son. And you work out your daily problems with whom?
The infinite
The
spirit.
infinite Spirit. That makes sense? Okay, so if you're asking God for oil for your car, you're asking what? The infinite Spirit. Yeah, that's part of your daily working out, right? All right.
The creator or sovereign sons who preside over the destinies of the local universes stand in the place of both the universal Father and the eternal Son of paradise. These universal sons receive in the name of the Father the adoration of worship and give ear to the pleas of their petitioning subjects throughout their respective creations. To the children of a local universe, a Michael son is, to all practical intents and purposes, God. He is the local universe personification of the universal Father and the eternal Son. The infinite Spirit maintains personal contact with the children of these realms through the universe spirits, the administrative and creative associates of the Paradise Creator Sons.
So our concept of God is probably Michael, right? And it's okay to worship God through Michael, right? Because he created everything that we know of. But he really is the personification of both the Father and the Son, right? The eternal Son. All right? And the infinite Spirit maintains contract through us, through what? The universe spirits. Who would that be? Our guardian angels, right? The Holy Spirit, right? The mind spirit. Those are all part of our physical universe, right? Okay, let's do these last two paragraphs real quick. Is that all right? Jill, would you take the next one?
Is it since worship?
Yes.
Since worship connotes the mobilization of all the powers of the human personality under the dominance of the evolving soul and subject to the divine directionization of the associated thought adjuster. The mind of material limitations can never become highly conscious of the real significance of true worship. Man's realization of the reality of the worship experience is chiefly determined by the developmental status of his evolving immortal soul. The spiritual growth of the soul takes place wholly independently of the intellectual self-consciousness.
I could spend an hour on this paragraph, but basically, the soul itself grows independent of our own self-consciousness. Isn't that interesting? So as the adjuster works on your soul, and the Spirit of Truth and the Holy Spirit are all adding to the growth of your soul, right? Basically, worship helps mobilize this in happening. Does that make sense? All right? And it really depends on the developmental status of this evolving immortal soul. And what are they talking about? That's your pre-Morancha soul, right? Which turns into your real Morancha soul when you get to the mansion worlds. Okay? One more paragraph, and we'll quit for today.
The worship experience consists in the sublime attempt of the betrothed adjuster to communicate to the Divine Father the inexpressible longings and the unutterable aspirations of the human soul, the conjoint creation of the God-seeking mortal mind and the God-revealing immortal adjuster. Worship is therefore the act of the material mind's assenting to the attempt of its spiritualizing self, under the guidance of the associated spirit, to communicate with God as a faith son of the universal Father. The mortal mind consents to worship. The immortal soul craves and initiates worship. The divine adjuster presence conducts such worship in behalf of the mortal mind and the evolving mortal soul. True worship, in the last analysis, becomes an experience realized on 4 cosmic levels: the intellectual, the morontial, the spiritual, and the personal, the consciousness of mind, soul, and spirit, and their unification in personality. Oh, that's pretty heavy.
Oh man, you could spend another hour on this paragraph too, but I'm going to try to cut it real short here. Okay, so what they're talking about here is this is the adjuster trying to communicate for the longings and aspirations of our soul that we cannot express, right? That's what true worship is. Okay, so no matter how we try to, we can't really put it into words. But as we go up into the mansion worlds and things like this, we learn how to worship more clearly, don't we? Okay, and it becomes the greatest thing in our life, this worship. Okay, and then they go on to tell us that the mind consents to worship, the soul craves it, right? And the soul also is the part of you that initiates the worship for the mortal mind, right? And then it goes on to say that true worship, in the last analysis, becomes an experience of the 4 cosmic levels, and this is very, very, very important. The intellectual, that's part of your mind, right? The morontia, that's part of your evolving soul, right? The spiritual, that's part of the spiritual circuit of the sun, right? And the personal, what's the personal? That's the Father's personal spirit circuit, right? So all 4 of those, along with the consciousness of mind, the soul, and the spirit, they all unify in your personality to try to relay this worship together. Okay, so it's all the parts of the Paradise Trinity coming together within you to try to express adoration back to God. What a wonderful concept. Let's pray and we'll quit for tonight. Millie, would you like to pray for us to close tonight?
Lord God Almighty, we are grateful for the opportunity to be here and study this new revelation. We thank you for exposing us to this world. We ask that you help us to understand it. Be with Roger as he tries to help other people understand it and spread the word. Thank you. Amen.
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 Thank you all for coming. Please come see us again. Oh.
Before we stop,
Stop
can
the
I share
video.
something with the group?
Yeah, let me stop the video. Too long here.